Let's talk about some of the indicators that you may be avoidant. The first one is you may have an overinflated view about yourselves. I think what I have seen working with people is it doesn't always, that to me, like, I feel like sometimes when that's said, you think of like more like a narcissistic trait, like you're full of yourself and like those type of things. I don't always see it that way with these people that come to mind in avoidance. And also, we should say you may or may not have all of these attributes, right? If you're avoidant, you might only relate to some of them. And I think of it more like maybe overly confident in certain areas. Like I don't think of them as like really full. I mean, I'm sure there are people that are full of themselves or really think highly of themselves that also have this attachment style. But I don't want you to get hung up on that one because then it's like we start shaming ourselves. Oh my gosh, do I think really highly of myself if I relate to the other ones? And I don't think that's the case necessarily. I just feel like sometimes, do you get what I'm saying, Tiffany? Is there
Yeah,
something you would add?
I would just add this, and I don't think that she will mind me saying this because it's a question she asks me a lot. But my daughter is always saying, "Am I a narcissist?" And I'm like, "Come on now, you're not." She's like, "Yeah, but I think a lot of myself, right?" But really, that shows up as insecurity for her,
Mm,
and she'll admit that. She knows that. She just so I think she just kind of like because she's super to a T. This is her attachment style. And
mhm.
so, I just see that in her. And, when she questions it, she comes across very like confident and yeah, especially like in photos and all those kind of things.
Mhm.
But kind of shows up more as really an insecurity for her.
Yeah, and I think of a client of ours, she comes across super confident, right? And she really struggles because of I mean, she has to work hard to stay in to do the work because she is avoidant and exactly that confidence. I almost think that's a better description of like something to look for than almost the other
Yeah, I
that's
agree.
commonly used with it.
Uh-huh.
I'd actually make the argument that that would fit better, that they come across that way. So maybe they do have an overinflated view about themselves, but I think it's more that they come across that they have an overinflated view about themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think, deep down at the core of it, it's more of an insecurity than anything.
Hmm. I agree.
Yeah. Um, have negative views of their partners. What's your take on that?
I think maybe sometimes they assume the worst. I mean, we saw this, I've seen this in real time with another client where they assumed that this, their partner was ghosting them and they weren't. They just hadn't messaged them for 8 hours, like
Yeah.
things like that. Like they assume that the worst must be happening. And I want to be careful because I don't want people to then ignore their intuition if they feel like these things are happening. But if you feel like you're always going there, it's because if you're always going there, you can protect yourself. I mean, that's why we do that. We look for the worst to happen and we get prepared because we don't want to get hurt. And these avoidant attachment styles, they're doing that to avoid getting hurt. That's why it's avoidant, right? And the avoidant dismissive is uh, that's my thoughts on it. What about you?
Same. I think that, you know, people I can think of that like that exactly what you just said, not having that quick response back from the partner, then it all of a sudden turns into they almost catastrophize and it turns
Mhm.
into, the worst case scenario. I think exactly the same on that.
The next one is seeks independent identity from relationships. So they really have a hard time blending in with their partner. Um, I've seen this where they like still separate themselves. I've seen some that are in businesses, right, with their partners, and they'll try to like have their own identity, or they avoid trying to go into a business with their partner. That was kind of a random example, but like I just had somebody pop in my head that I know is also avoidant, and that's kind of the way it looks. Or they won't like it's never we, it's always I, like when they're talking. Yeah, just things like that. Does anything pop up for you?
Yeah, I have a client that is uh, comes from a bad relationship, finds somebody that she feels like has a secure attachment style and gets into the relationship a little bit, realizes that he's very anxious. Like he doesn't like it when he's not, can't be with her all the time. And she's so avoidant, and she doesn't want to, she doesn't even want to call him her boyfriend. Like she keeps her identity very independent of the relationship. She doesn't want to claim it as a relationship.
Yeah, because you don't get hurt if you don't claim it.
Yeah, she's not going to get hurt. And, she's been so hurt in the past that I think she's just, super protective. And it's interesting for her because at first she felt like she was just super anxious attached, right? Coming out of that abusive relationship. But really when she was able to kind of find her true self, she really has found that she's avoidant. Now she's trying to move into secure, right? Which we are all trying to do. But that's what it looks like for her, is not wanting to identify that relationship as a relationship, because then it labels it and means something for her. The next one is struggles with intimacy.
I think that's kind of similar to what we just talked about.
Yeah,
in a lot of ways.
I think so too.
I think they struggle. Where I see it is they really struggle with affection sometimes, especially in public affection.
Yeah.
And I mean, the thing about it is it's about balance in all of these things. Can you have too much affection? I mean, then you're dancing and anxious, you're clingy and you're on top of the partner and, things like that. When it's we know these people, we know these couples, and we're okay, this is not the time and place, but also can go the other way. But it's yeah, don't touch me. Just where they're moving away from the partner and they avoid that kind of intimacy. They also might avoid intimacy with details of their lives, really getting deep, really sharing. It can be taken not just in a physical way, but maybe even getting into the intimate details of their self. Hey, thanks for listening.
Don't forget to leave us a review.
For more relationship recovery tips and tools, follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and all things social media at The Relationship Recovery.
You can also watch highlights of the show over on YouTube.
If you feel like our podcast is speaking to you, check out our coaching services, courses, bundles, and more at therelationshiprecovery.com.
We'll see you next week.